El presidente Trump lleva una semana entera comportándose como un hombre acorralado. Y no es para menos. Su propio círculo lo está abandonando mientras el escándalo Epstein le estalla en plena cara y amenaza con devorar su mandato. No solo su base está partida, también los congresistas que lo defendían a muerte ahora le clavan el cuchillo sin ni siquiera disimular. Y lo peor, los mismos exasesores que él dejó tirados están empezando a filtrar mensajes, documentos y conversaciones que lo comprometen mucho más de lo que él quiere admitir. Y hoy vamos a revisar una de esas filtraciones, un mensaje escalofriante entre Epstein y Steve Bannon que expone el nivel de pánico de la Casa Blanca y las razones por las que Trump intenta maquillar todo como si fuera un invento partidista.
I suffered so much pain.
So much pain.
So much pain.
I suffered so much pain. I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
This is me.
This was me.
This is me.
When I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
There are about 1,000 of us.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
Lo que acabamos de ver es devastador. Lo más insultante es que Mike Johnson, el mismo que posó como un aliado compasivo frente a estas mujeres, terminó dándole la espalda en cuanto la Casa Blanca le ordenó proteger al presidente. Es brutal escuchar a niñas que hoy son adultas descubrir el horror que le vivieron y aún así ver a funcionarios tratando de minimizarlo porque temen lo que pueda salir en los archivos. Pero para entender el nivel de desesperación dentro del círculo del presidente, necesitamos ver cómo reacciona cuando un periodista le pregunta en vivo por su propio vínculo con Epstein y por lo que congresistas de su propio partido están diciendo.
Massey says he's concerned that the Epstein probe you are calling for could be a smokescreen to block the release of more files. Is that the case?
Well, I don't want to talk about it because fake news like you're a terrible reporter, and fake news like you, they just keep bringing that up to deflect from the tremendous success of the Trump administration. So a guy like Massey, his poll numbers are showing he's at 6% approval rating right now. And we call him Rand Paul Jr. because he never votes for the Republicans.
Minutos después de ese intercambio, el presidente corre a publicar en su red social un comentario frenético, que los archivos deben publicarse, que no tienen nada que ocultar, que él es un caso de un invento demócrata y que es hora de superar el tema. Todo en un mismo párrafo. Esta lógica se derrite. Si es un invento, entonces ¿qué archivos quiere publicar? ¿Y por qué asegura que están escondiendo algo? Pero la parte más explosiva no vino de Trump, sino de un mensaje que Epstein envió a Steve Bannon semanas antes de ser arrestado. Ese texto es una bomba. Eso pinta en un retrato muy claro. Bannon sabía que Trump estaba aterrado. Epstein sabía que tenía información capaz de hundir a más de uno. Y ambos conocían perfectamente por qué la Casa Blanca estaba tan obsesionada con controlar qué se publica y qué no. Además, no olvidemos que Bannon pasó horas grabando material con Epstein para rehabilitar su imagen, material que nunca vio la luz. ¿Será acaso porque en esos videos hay respuestas a las que las preguntas de la Casa Blanca intenta sofocar? Y aquí entra una escena en el Congreso, porque mientras Trump intenta tapar filtraciones, hay legisladores exigiendo la publicación completa de los archivos. Vamos con las declaraciones del congresista Robert García.
I mean, clearly, he is completely panicked. He is desperate. He knows that the American public is all now lining up to fight to ensure that the release of the files actually happens. And he's doing everything that he can to intimidate, to politicize and weaponize the government, to stop the files from being released. I mean, this last week, we were able, of course, to get out really important documents and information about the relationship between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Some of those documents, read them for yourself, I think are quite disturbing. They're quite damning. There are definitely connections there. And I think the one thing that has become crystal clear this week is that this is a White House cover-up and that Donald Trump is absolutely hiding something.
And this is the interesting part, right? We don't know from the documents that were released what legal culpability in this matter Donald Trump had. It wasn't clear enough to make that determination. But what's the cover-up for? What is this now? This was a MAGA-fueled thing to say that this was a Democratic problem and let's get these files out. Donald Trump said he would. His FBI deputy director and his FBI director were all on the same team on this one. They were all going to get these files out, and now suddenly there's nothing to see here.
That's exactly right. You can't spend your entire campaign, have your vice presidential nominee do the same, have the entire MAGAverse saying want to release the files, and then, as we remember, they tried to actually fake a release with a bunch of like far-right influencers that went nowhere. Then Donald Trump says, oh, wait, there's actually nothing there. This is over. The reality is this. We've been successful as Democrats to essentially fight to get these other documents released. They haven't come from the government. They've come from the Epstein estate because we've been successful in forcing some subpoena votes at the Oversight Committee. But now we know that what's in the DOJ dwarfs what we've already received from the estate. For us to solve this case, for us to solve and get justice for these women and these survivors who were in many cases girls and children when they were raped and abused, we have to get access to the full Epstein files at the DOJ. They are under subpoena right now from our committee. They've been unresponsive, and now they're forcing the entire Congress to take this vote. It's going to pass with substantial numbers, and they have to release the files.
So let's talk about this. You've been working with a number of Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie. Donald Trump said some nasty stuff about Massie last night. The White House put the screws to Lauren Boebert the other day. But the bottom line is there is this sense that if you're not the 218th vote, like Adelita Grijalva was, and you're a Republican, you may have no choice but to vote for this thing, what Congressman Swalwell referred to as a jailbreak.
I think that's right. I mean, look, you've already seen in the last couple of days, there have been Republicans that have come out publicly and said, I'm going to vote for this. And this is on top of the handful that actually joined Thomas Massie.
Yeah, like Don Bacon said that.
John Bacon, Kevin Kiley. I mean, you're hearing that.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that privately from other Republicans as well. So I do think we're going to have a significant group. Now, what kind of pressure is Donald Trump going to try to put on these members? What kind of operation will the White House try to implement? It was not successful last week. But to take a member to the Situation Room with the director of the FBI and the lead of the Department of Justice to try to intimidate them to release and remove their name from this effort is insane. I mean, that just does not happen. And so the question, again, I think is really clear.
What's this all for?
What the hell is being hid by the White House?
Tell me how this works, by the way. This is called a discharge petition, which means it's not like a normal bill that has to go through party leadership and wait for vote. If a discharge petition passes in the House, Mike Johnson has no say in what happens next. But what does happen next? Is this a bill? Does it go to the Senate? Does it go to the president for signature? Can he choose not to say? What's the process?
The process is exactly like a bill. So essentially, the House is now forcing the vote. It has to actually happen. The Speaker can't stop a vote. The vote will likely happen this week. We expect a good number of Republicans to vote yes. That bill will then move on to the Senate, and the Senate will then take up this bill. It's important for us to get as many Republicans as possible so that the Senate understands that it's bipartisan and that the country wants this vote. And then the pressure will then move on to the U.S. Senate. They're going to have to vote this thing, get it through, and then it goes to the president. And the question becomes, is the president once again becomes the one man in the country that can sign that bill or choose to release the files immediately and bring justice for these survivors? Why is he protecting Ghislaine Maxwell, a monster who has been involved in the rape and abuse of children and women? Why is he moving her to a less secure?
El panorama es evidente. La Casa Blanca está haciendo presión desesperada porque sabe que lo que viene no es un simple dolor de cabeza político, es un riesgo real para el presidente, para sus operadores y para quienes participaron del encubrimiento. Que hayan recurrido a tácticas de intimidación con congresistas lo dice todo. Y ahora, como anticipo del siguiente video, nos vamos a centrar en cómo esta votación forzada puede convertir a Trump en el primer presidente a intentar bloquear documentos que él mismo prometió publicar. Veremos nombres, números y maniobras internas.
Donald Trump quiere que compres un truco barato. Ya liberamos los archivos Epstein, sigan circulando. No, lo que ocurre es exactamente lo contrario. Mientras presume de transparencia, su equipo con Pam Bondi al frente, flanqueada por Kash Patel y Todd Blanche, está montando una operación de contención para frenar, trocear y enterrar lo más explosivo. Hoy Bondi lo dejó entrever y cuando le preguntaron salió corriendo. Vamos a desmenuzar cómo están fabricando la coartada y qué tenemos que vigilar en los próximos 30 días.
Whether or not we get what we need from the Department of Justice is a whole other issue. Pam Bondi does not work for the American people. She has made it clear that she has one boss, and that is Donald Trump. And so we know that there is an outstanding subpoena to the Department of Justice from the Oversight Committee, and they have failed to properly comply with that subpoena in the first place. The only reason that we're even getting information right now is because of the Epstein estate. They have been the only ones that have actually released information in compliance with the outstanding subpoena that we have. So there's a lot more that they could have done. I think the fact that the president has switched his tone signals to everyone that they basically are going to say, well, now there's an active investigation, and so therefore legally we can't release anything else.
Directo y claro. Jasmine Crockett recuerda dos puntos claves. El Departamento de Justicia de Bondi está incumpliendo un citatorio del Congreso y la única razón por la que hoy sabemos algo es porque el patrimonio de Epstein entregó material, no por buena voluntad del gobierno. La última línea es el manual del encubrimiento, declarar una investigación en curso para cerrar la llave informativa. Con ese telón de fondo, escuchen cómo Bondi se refugia en una fase hueca. Seguiremos la ley, sin comprometerse a nada concreto cuando le preguntan por plazos y formatos de publicación.
The next steps, Madam Attorney General, for the DOJ regarding what we assume President Trump will sign into law with the Epstein files. Is this going to be on the Justice Department website? What are you doing here over the next 30 days as we understand it?
We will continue to follow the law with maximum transparency while protecting victims.
Yeah. When you say follow the law, Madam Attorney General, do you mean that you will provide all the files by 30 days?
We will follow the law. The law passed both chambers last evening. It has not yet been signed, but we will continue to follow the law, again, while protecting victims, but also providing maximum transparency.
3 veces follow the law, que significa pues seguir las leyes. Cero respuesta operativa, ni qué, ni cómo, ni cuándo. Si de verdad existiera voluntad de transparencia, la respuesta sería logística, formato, repositorio, cronograma y criterios de redacción. En cambio, repiten un eslogan jurídico para ganar tiempo. Y aquí llegó la trampa. Cuando la prensa pide detalles sobre el nuevo material y el alcance de la pesquisa, Bondi activa la cortina de humo, pendiente en investigación. Escuchen.
The issue with the new information that you just indicated, is the department seeking information perhaps from the Epstein estate because Mr. Blanche did not have that information when he interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell? What new information, and would you limit the new investigation to just those named persons that the president talked about, or is this a broad, open-ended investigation?
I would refer to the Deputy Attorney General's post that he put out on X, and we're not going to say anything else on that because now it is a pending investigation in the Southern District of New York. But you're on point.
De golpe todo es pendiente. En efecto práctico, inmovilizar divulgaciones y desplazar preguntas al limbo procesal. Si la prioridad fuera la verdad, delimitaran con precisión qué se publica sin dañar causas y qué se reserva por pruebas sensibles. Aquí, en cambio, el objetivo es cerrar conversación. Y cuando ya no hay más que esquivar, sueltan la clave jurídica, que usarán de escudo, las carve-outs, y se levantan de la sala. Oigan a Touch Blanche y miren cómo termina la conferencia.
The law has carve-outs to protect victims and to protect information surrounding victims, which is what we do not only in this case but in every case. So that's a fair question, but neither the House nor the Senate's version, the same version, suggested otherwise. So
thank you all.
Ojo, proteger víctimas y fuentes es correcto y necesario. El problema es extender ese paraguas a reputaciones de terceros o a cualquier cosa que incomode el poder, tal como ya han insinuado aliados de Trump. El siguiente movimiento es previsible: invocar seguridad nacional para tachar masivamente. Si quieren contexto, la respuesta no es censurar, es publicar íntegro lo publicable y justificar con precisión quirúrgica cada redacción. Esta maniobra, perdimos la votación pero igual controlamos la narrativa, ya está siendo señalada. Trump no doblegó al Congreso, lo doblegaron. Escuchen este repaso.
I mean, really, for the first time in recent memory, He was simply unable to bully and browbeat and cow congressional Republicans into just doing what he wants. But boy, did he try. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson kept the House adjourned for nearly 2 months, in part, we think, so he could avoid swearing in Democratic Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva, who would be the final deciding vote on that discharge petition. When that plan failed, Trump personally called Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado, one of 4 Republicans on the petition, to try to pressure her to vote no on the discharge petition, to take her name off. When that didn't work, Boebert was summoned to the Situation Room with the head of DOJ and FBI for a kind of bad cop routine, where they again tried to pressure her to take her name off of a petition that she had already signed. That failed as well. Republicans staged an open revolt and Trump backed down. They had to kind of knock the king over. Checkmate. Get up from the table. And that in turn led to some very funny about faces. For instance, on Friday, Republican Congressman Troy Nehls of Texas posted, quote, "I'll be voting no on the Epstein hoax. I'm not going to let this hoax manufactured by Democrats slow us down." But then Trump tried to pretend like he was fine with the vote, actually, after realizing that he was going to lose it, and said, okay, you guys all vote for it, sure. So then Nehls had to twist himself into knots to explain why he was now voting yes on what he called a hoax just a couple of days ago.
That's a good question. No, I don't regret the post.
Well, you said you're no,
not.
Yes.
I don't regret the post.
Regrets aside, the bill will become law. As many folks have pointed out, however, the legislation is entirely unnecessary in the first place.
Let's be crystal clear. Trump has the power to release the files today. He does not even need a vote. And he continues to defy the subpoena of the Oversight Committee to release all the files. What is Donald Trump hiding?
What is Donald Trump hiding is a question that he gets a lot recently, and he usually doesn't take it well.
If there's nothing incriminating in the files, sir,
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question.
2 female reporters asking obviously totally newsworthy questions about an issue of the day. One gets called piggy. The other gets called insubordinate because she didn't, bow and scrape to the Saudi king. The Epstein Files Transparency Act now heads to Donald Trump's desk. It's unclear if he'll, ditch out from the Saudi Crown Prince dinner to sign it tonight. It is clear Donald Trump still does not want to release the files. I think he's hoping that by caving on this vote and pretending to declare victory and say, oh, let's move on to everything else, he can just sort of reduce the pressure, get everyone to forget about Epstein. That, I gotta say, seems like a dubious strategy considering how poor his instincts have been.
Entonces aquí vamos a abarcar clave sobre clave. 1. Trump intentó frenar el voto y falló. Ahora finge que estuvo a favor. 2. El proyecto es casi accesorio. El ejecutivo puede publicar hoy mismo, pero prefiere incumplir citatorios y atacar a periodistas. 3. El plan real es declarar victoria y pedir que miremos hacia otro lado mientras Bondi invoca investigaciones en curso y seguridad nacional. Los próximos 30 días son decisivos. Si permitimos que reduzcan la presión, la historia se reescribe y el encubrimiento se consolida. ¿Qué tenemos que exigir? Calendario público de publicación y buscable, criterios de redacción estrictamente limitados a protección de víctimas y fuentes activas. 4. Auditoría independiente del proceso. Y 5, como último, cumplimiento inmediato de los citatorios pendientes.
El presidente Trump y su entorno llevan una semana entera intentando vendernos el mismo cuento gastado. Supuestamente quieren que se revelen los archivos de Epstein. Sí, claro. Y yo sería astronauta si me lo propusiera. La realidad es mucho más simple. Trump solo quiere que salga lo que sirva para golpear a sus enemigos. Todo lo demás, incluido lo que él promete, lo quiere enterrado. Pero esta vez, la estrategia salió mal. Su propio abogado dejó escapar algo que deberían haber mantenido bajo llave. Vamos a desarmarlo todo.
Department investigate his political opponents. And Pam Bondi responded by basically saying yes, sir, and moving in that direction. What do you make of that?
Well, it's both heartbreaking and totally unsurprising. The Department of Justice has just become a protection racket for Donald Trump and a witch hunt operation against his political opponents. This is why our democracy is in such peril right now, is that for the first time in our history, the Department of Justice operates in order to try to punish and lock up anybody that criticizes Donald Trump. I'm really proud of the work that Representative Massey has done in the House of Representatives, along with Ro Khanna. And yes, John Thune should bring that vote to the Senate floor as soon as it passes the House of Representatives. It's true that Donald Trump is trying to cover up for, I think, a host of really powerful and rich people, but he's frankly not that selfless. He wouldn't be going through all of this effort to try to stop the release of these files if he wasn't seriously implicated in those files. This is most likely the biggest corruption scandal in the history of the country. We know that because Donald Trump is going to these extraordinary lengths to stop these files from coming out. The Senate should take this vote. I think it'll be likely another big bipartisan vote, and I'm grateful to our House colleagues for sending it our way.
Ahí lo tienen. Murphy no exagera. Mientras Trump finge pedir transparencia, su equipo está moviendo cielo y tierra para que solo se filtre lo que le conviene. El truco de siempre, abramos los archivos, pero solo los que pueden dañar a otros. Mientras tanto, en la Casa Blanca corre detrás el humo que ellos mismos producen. Y con esa hipocresía en pantalla, hacemos el siguiente punto, el llamado de Thomas Massie, uno de los pocos republicanos que, aunque no se atreve a decirlo directamente, deja entrever el verdadero miedo que Trump quiere que no salga.
I'm hoping to get a veto-proof majority on this legislation when it comes up for a vote. And, you know, the president's been saying this is a hoax. He's been saying that for months. Well, he's just now decided to investigate a hoax, if it's a hoax. And I have another concern about these investigations that he's announced. If they have ongoing investigations in certain areas, those documents can't be released. So this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files.
I mean, it is extraordinary to hear him demand an investigation and only
Massie lo dice sin decirlo. Si Trump afirma que todo es un invento, ¿por qué presiona para iniciar una investigación que, oh sorpresa, podría demorar o evitar que los archivos se hagan públicos? La respuesta es tan obvia que hasta incomoda. Trump quiere seleccionar lo que le sale, esconder lo que le toca y fabricar un espectáculo que apunte a otros, desde Bill Clinton hasta cualquier nombre útil para distraer. Y justo cuando creían que el teatro estaba bajo control, llega un desliz más revelador, un testimonio directo de su propio abogado, Todd Blanche.
Since the campaign trail about Jeffrey Epstein, which is that he has nothing to hide. And the Department of Justice has never disputed that. And so what we have done, what we have been doing since January 20th, is a thorough investigation. A thorough investigation of everything that we have. We issued a memo in July about that, and President Trump directed us on Friday to continue to look at that, which we're happy to do. This Department of Justice has done more than really any administration in recent memory to combat sex trafficking, to combat any kind of abuses against children, against young women. And so there's nothing we have to hide when it comes to that. And so when President Trump tells us to investigate it, we welcome it with open arms, and we'll obviously do that. That's what we've been doing. But look, the Epstein files, the Epstein investigation is something that has gone on for over a decade, and there's nobody that wants to make sure that we deal with that more than President Trump, more than Attorney General Bondi, Director Patel, myself, and that's what we're going to do. And so that's when President Trump said that on Friday, that's nothing different than what we're going to do anyway. And so we're going to continue to find out if there's anybody responsible, anybody that hasn't been held accountable, and if they're out there, we'll find them.
Yeah, I think most Americans would say the fact it has been going on for more than a decade, and it seems like nobody's left to prosecute or bring charges against their...
Ahí está, sin maquillaje, sin giro comunicacional. El abogado de Trump reconoce que sí hay más evidencia. La que revisaron solo hasta cierto punto deja cosas sin mirar. ¿Acaso este no era lo que estaba dado por cerrado? ¿No era que había más para descubrir? ¿No era que Bondi había declarado que todo estaba resuelto? Lo que Todd Blanche dejó escapar es devastador. Pararon de investigar. ignoraron evidencia pertinente, dedicaron recursos a limpiar todo rastro que impudiera involucrar al presidente. ¿Y ahora qué hacen? Fingen que reabren lo que nunca quisieron mirar en serio. No porque busquen justicia, sino porque necesitan convertir la investigación en arma política mientras intentan mantener a salvo al jefe. Ese gesto de sorpresa del presentador de Fox lo dice todo. Incluso quienes suelen cubrirle la espalda a Trump ya no pueden sostener esta contradicción. Pero antes de entrar al cierre, necesitamos una última pieza del rompecabezas. La postura de quienes no están jugando al encubrimiento.
There are thousands of victims, and rich and powerful men still have buildings named after them, scholarships named after them. This is not partisan. They all need to be held accountable. The Epstein class needs to go.
How many Republicans are going to join you? Could you have a veto-proof majority?
Well, I was hoping that, and then Donald Trump started to tweet out saying that he's going to unendorse people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. So it's basically Massey and me versus the White House. I mean, they're calling members to the Situation Room. But you know why Trump is losing his MAGA base on this? The reason he's losing it is he ran saying there's a corrupt governing elite that has shafted you. That this is the Epstein class versus forgotten Americans, and I'm going to stand up for forgotten Americans. He's forgotten those forgotten Americans. And we are saying that we are going to stand up for survivors, for America's kids, and we're going to hold.
Lo que vimos hoy desnuda la esencia del poder bajo Trump. Un presidente que se presenta como enemigo de las élites, pero que se aferra a ellas cuando les conviene. Un departamento de justicia reducido a escudo personal. Legisladores obligados a elegir entre la verdad o la obediencia, y un país obligado en un juego de sombras donde la transparencia es solo un eslogan donde beneficia al presidente.
La Casa Blanca de Trump y su coro en el Congreso intenta reescribir la historia del encubrimiento de Epstein en tiempo real. Hoy presumen que siempre apoyaron la transparencia porque empujaron un voto, cuando en los hechos lleva años frenando y diluyendo y desviando la mirada. El truco ahora es agitar nuevos correos que supuestamente salpican solo a demócratas, mientras pasan de puntillas por la evidencia vieja y clave. ¿Qué pasó en la cárcel? ¿Quién intervino? ¿Quién mandó a callar? Y justo ahí hay novedades contundentes. Vamos a ordenarlas clip por clip.
This is a distraction to take away from the fact that the Guardians of Pedophiles is literally trying to protect pedophiles. The president is a convicted felon and an accused sex offender. Stacey Plaskett hasn't been accused of either. So what are we actually here talking about? Trump and Epstein were besties. We've all seen the pictures of them. We saw the birthday book. So why are y'all more interested in talking about Stacey Plaskett than Trump's relationship with the man? When did y'all become so moral? Because I can remember when y'all went and signed the discharge petition. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to vote for this, but you wouldn't sign the discharge petition. Until we decide that we are going to go after the actual rapists and pedophiles, miss me with your moral high ground. Folks who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio. I just want to be clear. If this is the standard that we're going to make, just know we're going to expose it all. And just know that the FEC filings...
Y aquí tienes un golpe al mentón. Crockett desnuda el doble rasero. Mientras fabrican escándalos contra demócratas, ignoran vínculos financieros y sociales entre Epstein y figuras del gobierno. Y lo más relevante, recuerda que la transparencia no nació del arrepentimiento republicano. Llegó pese a su resistencia a firmar una petición de descarga. Esa resistencia no fue un malentendido, fue una estrategia. Veamos cómo describe Crockett el bloqueo institucional que montaron para ganar tiempo y, llegado el caso, matar el impulso en otra cámara o escudarse en causas abiertas.
We know that he didn't even bring the House back in because he was trying to avoid us dealing with Epstein. In fact, he would not even swear in a duly elected, now new member of Congress, depriving and having to be sued by her state and others because they literally did not have any representation. He violated the Constitution to avoid this. So miss me on pretending that this is about the victims. In addition to that, when we finally released some of the information that we got from the Epstein estate, and we had all the victims' names redacted, who was it that was out there saying, oh, and this person is the person that is supposedly mentioned in this section?
The Republicans,
The Republicans did that, to the extent that that victim's family had to come out against them
for revealing potentially her name. So they're full of it. So right now, what I think is going to happen, the only reason that he is switched is because obviously he has had lots of conversations. Either the Senate is not going to take it up or they don't have the votes in the Senate. One of the two. But he never plans for this to actually go forward.
Or you think this is going to get killed in the Senate?
I think that this is going to get killed some way, somehow. Or the other option is that I think they're going to do the very same thing, and not necessarily the same thing, but the very reason that the files could not be released before is because there were active cases that were taking place. All the cases have been concluded because this administration decided they didn't want to talk about
retrasar sesiones, negar juramentos y filtrar identidades pese a redacciones y cuando no alcance, refugiarse en el no procede por causas pendientes. No es defensa de víctimas, es ingeniería procedimental para apagar focos. Y mientras montas cortinas de humo, aparece en la pieza que no quería que mires, la muerte de Epstein. Su hermano insiste con detalles en que no fue un suicidio y señala a actores concretos del primer gobierno de Trump. Escucha.
Hold on a second. Let me ask you a question. Jeffrey did not commit suicide. That's my focus. I don't care about the files. Jeffrey's dead. So I don't care of the implications of the files. That's other people's problems. My brother did not commit suicide, and we're finding more information to prove that he didn't commit suicide. So the question becomes, who killed him? Well, who had him killed? I mean, Bill Barr is key to this cover. He's come up with so much bullshit, okay, and lies, demonstrable, provable lies, okay, that either he's covering it up or he's stupid. What?
All right. So one thing at a time. We've discussed the fact that you don't think your brother killed himself on the Chris Cuomo Project on my podcast. People can go check out that conversation. You know, the head of the FBI and his number two, both of who used to suggest exactly what you are, says now that they've looked at everything, there is no proof that it was anything but suicide. Kash Patel, right, Dan Bongino.
Stop right there. They didn't look at anything. There was never a suicide-capable a homicide-capable investigation done. They called it a suicide early on to stop the investigation. If you read the DOJ report, it's all about the screw-ups in the jails. Cameras not working, guards not doing their job. It doesn't address the issue of the cause of his death. And it was misrepresented as a suicide because they didn't want to investigate. And more information.
So you're accusing the head of the FBI in this administration of a cover-up?
Absolutely. He was the one who said in his testimony, you know a suicide when you see one. I had to laugh. How many suicides has that jackass seen? Okay? He's not a doctor. He's not a pathologist. He never saw Jeffrey's body. He wasn't there, but he knows a suicide.
Well, he's certainly changed his story about it. But I want to ask you one other thing, okay? And I get it. You don't want to talk about it. It was a private back and forth with your brother. Fine. But it is being used as proof that your brother had compromised information about Donald Trump. Is that what you are referring to, and is that what you suspect?
No, Jeffrey, in 2016, I said this publicly before, Jeffrey told me that if he said what he knew about the candidates, they'd have to cancel the election. He didn't tell me what he knew.
Dos afirmaciones incendiarias. Primero, que se etiquetó de suicidio para clausurar una línea de pesquisa sin peritaje homicida serio y centrar todo en cámaras rotas y guardias dormidos. Segundo, que Epstein decía tener material comprometedor sobre candidatos, incluido Trump. Esto no prueba conclusiones por sí solo, pero sí marca los puntos que hay que investigar con rigor. Cadena de custodia, órdenes internas, quién decidió qué se miraba y qué no. Por eso el presente cuenta, pero la llave está en el pasado. El ejecutivo podría publicar hoy y no lo hace. Y hay voces incluso fuera del Congreso que lo subrayan.
This vote today matters, but here is the truth. Donald Trump could direct the Department of Justice to release the files today. He is choosing not to. They are already under subpoena, led by oversight Democrats, and have refused. This is an ongoing cover-up by the Trump White House, and Mike Johnson and the House has been complicit. What is Trump hiding? Why not release the files today? This is a
time has expired.
Release the files today. Thank you.
El voto importa, sí, pero no es excusa para la inacción. El presidente puede instruir publicación inmediata o mínimo incumplimiento de citatorios. Si no lo hace, no es incapacidad, es decisión. Ya englobando todo, pues vimos que en las noticias de hoy hubo un intento de un nuevo relato donde el gobierno se pinta como campeón de la transparencia mientras enterró el tema cuando pudo. Segundo, la mecánica de distracción procedimental procedimiento de no hay sesión, faltas de votos, causas pendientes para frenar entregas. Tercero, acusaciones serias sobre la muerte de Epstein que exigen una revisión independiente y retroactiva de la investigación bajo el primer gobierno de Trump. Y cuarto, el hecho presente, Trump puede liberar hoy y no lo hace.
El presidente Donald Trump lleva años rodeándose de aduladores, leales ciegos y funcionarios que solo sirven para sentir. Lo hizo porque creyó que así podría mover el Estado como si fuera su empresa quebrada, sin límites, sin supervisión y sin nadie que le dijera esto es ilegal. Pero hay algo que jamás pasó por su cabeza. Si te rodeas de incompetentes, todo termina explotando. Y hoy tenemos la prueba más reciente y más ridícula. Vamos a entrar en el desastre que provocó su propio vicepresidente, cómo ese error desató la furia del presidente y por qué ahora Trump está usando el FBI para intimidar a miembros de su propio partido.
Because, and the point that I was making, when people want to come bring smoke to Maryland, because we're saying that we want fair maps, but you sit on your hands and sit quiet and have nothing to say about Ohio, or have nothing to say about Missouri, or nothing to say about Texas. Literally, you are just parroting Donald Trump's talking points. And you know, and here's the thing. If you look at the quest for fair maps inside of the state of Maryland, it's actually a bipartisan push. We've had Republicans just yesterday come out and say they want to introduce legislation around fair maps. And so that is why I ordered a bipartisan redistricting advisory committee that is now going to actually listen to people, because our maps should not be decided in smoke-filled rooms, and definitely should not be decided because Donald Trump wants to call state legislatures and say, I need you to find me additional congressional seats. That's not how democracy should work. So Maryland will go through Maryland's process in a bipartisan fashion, and we will ensure, the work of our commission will ensure, that we will have fair maps come next November.
But Governor, the commission is bipartisan, but you have had some opposition from people in your own party. Democrat Bill Ferguson, the Maryland Senate president, has come out in the past month publicly and privately castigating efforts to do this, to engage in redistricting. He said the legal risks are too great for what is an uncertain outcome. What do you have to say to some of the concerns that efforts to redistrict are becoming a political litmus test to be involved in the conversation when it comes to looking ahead to the 2028 Democratic presidential primary?
Well, listen, I respect Bill Ferguson. I just could not disagree with him more on these legal risks. And also, it's not just me. It's also constitutional lawyers. It's also people like our Attorney General and our former Attorney General. It's also people like Jamie Raskin, who have also put out a public letter saying that there is an overestimation about what we consider to be the downside legal risk on this. And by asking the people, by actually saying that we want the people's input to make sure we have fair maps, I never find defending democracy to be a risky proposition. So where I differ on this is, you know, I think this moment requires fight. I think this moment requires urgency. I think this moment requires us.
Ahí lo tienen. El presidente Trump realmente creyó que las elecciones de medio tiempo eran un juego de mesa. Llamar a unos cuantos republicanos, pedirles un par de distritos nuevos y listo, victoria asegurada. Y lo más irónico, los primeros que corrieron a cumplirle son los mismos republicanos de Texas. Podrían haber cavado su propia tumba política, porque los cambios que hicieron ahora podrían volverse en su contra. La popularidad del presidente está tan desgastada que varios de esos distritos rojos por los pelos podrían voltear hacia los demócratas. Trump, intentando asegurarse de la mayoría, termina abriéndole la puerta al colapso. Por eso, a buscar nuevos estados donde exprimir unos cuantos escaños. Y ahí entra la Indiana, tanto que envió a J.D. Vance, sí, ese mismo que logra arruinar todo lo que toca, para presionar a los republicanos locales. Y aquí es donde, agárrense todos, porque la sorpresa de Vance desencadenó un caos monumental. Cuando Trump explota en redes, rara vez pasa a ser un berrinche. Pero cuando su base interpreta esos berrinches como órdenes divinas, las cosas escalan rápido. Horas después de que el presidente lo acusara de traicionar la nación, un senador estatal terminó con la policía irrumpiendo en su casa por un falso aviso de emergencia. Todo porque Trump no soporta que sus propios aliados rechacen su plan de manipular los mapas electorales. Y mientras el país mira hacia el otro lado, el presidente sigue utilizando el miedo como herramienta de gobierno. Esa es su verdadera palanca de poder, más que cualquier decreto o discurso. Y por si esto no fuera suficiente, viene otro ejemplo que está pasando por debajo del radar: el escándalo de Kristen Knoll en el Departamento de Seguridad Nacional. Sí, la funcionaria más preocupada por disfrazarse para la cámara que por hacer su propio trabajo. Lo de Nolm es una caricatura del poder mal usado. Es la demostración perfecta de cómo esta administración, propaganda primero y el país después, mientras miles de empleados federales estaban sin sueldo, ella estaba en caballo, sombrero de vaquera y cámaras de alta definición pagadas con los impuestos de los estadounidenses. Y detrás de estos shows se esconde un contrato oscuro de más de 140 millones entregado a una empresa fantasma creada días antes. Eso es una corrupción de manual, sin ningún intento de ocultarlo. Esto es rumor de Estado.
About Trump DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, that in any era, any other era I should say, would be a career-ending scandal. But to understand the pattern of corruption of this woman, we just have to zoom out just a little bit, just for a moment. Because since Noem took over DHS at the beginning of the year, she's become known for appearing to be more obsessed with putting on various costumes than doing her actual job. I mean, she donned a bulletproof vest just to talk to her own agents. She wore a Customs and Border Patrol uniform on Fox News. And of course, she is constantly, and I mean constantly, throwing on a cowboy hat and riding horses, always with plenty of cameras around to capture the moment. But Noem's apparent obsession with image actually goes much further than just putting on costumes, because she has directed more than 200 million taxpayer dollars into TV ads to promote her work at DHS. And just to put it in context, that is nearly twice what DHS spent on ads altogether in all of last year. And the content of those ads have already been a scandal kind of in and of themselves.
I'm Kristi Noem, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. Thank you, President Donald J. Trump, for securing our border.
And if you are wondering who exactly the target audience is for that, DHS spent $30,000 to run that ad, the one I just showed you, specifically in the ad market where Mar-a-Lago is. Now, as much as spending tens of thousands of dollars to make sure your ad plays on the TV near the president is a bizarre waste of taxpayer money, $30,000, it turns out, is a drop in the bucket compared to the more than $200 million DHS has spent this year making and airing ads. And the rest of that money is where the story gets truly bonkers. I mean, since March, we have known that DHS skipped the normal competitive bidding process when giving out the contracts to make and air these ads. DHS claimed that because Trump declared an emergency at the southern border, they didn't have to waste time getting competitive bids. And that brings me to the first part of ProPublica's big scoop today. Because it turns out that the majority of that no-bid contract money, $143 million taxpayer dollars, went to this kind of mysterious LLC in Delaware. An LLC that was created just days before it got that no-bid contract, just days. And the man who owns the home that LLC lists as its address did not respond to ProPublica's questions. Now, when asked why the agency chose that LLC, DHS said, quote, "The results speak for themselves," and then proceeded to claim that Trump has made the border the most secure it has been in American history. Not exactly answering the question.
Apenas han pasado unas horas desde que Donald Trump se vio obligado a firmar la ley que ordena liberar los archivos de Epstein, y el caos ya empezó a salpicar a su gente más cercana. La primera en caer, Pam Bondi, la misma que juró con la mano temblando que seguiría supuestamente la ley. Hoy está atrapada ocultando documentos, bloqueando información financiera y tratando desesperadamente de desviar la atención, porque lo que se está filtrando no es solo obsceno, es peligroso para este gobierno.
And so our work is ongoing every single day. Let me just start by sharing also the difference. So we have a law now that's been signed by the president that is asking the DOJ to release the files. Incredibly important for all the members to be on record and for this to sail forward. We also have a subpoena that was passed by the Oversight Committee that forced the hand of all the release of these documents, including the Department of Justice that we have been seeing over the last few weeks and months, and that will continue to produce documents. The difference is we know that the DOJ right now is somehow claiming there's going to be this new investigation or this kind of sham look at Democrats out of the Southern District of New York, which Pam Bondi, of course, announced recently. And there's concern that the language in the legislation speaks to there being a possible
look at, well, we may not release documents if there is an active investigation going, which of course is just a deflection on behalf of the Department of Justice. The subpoena doesn't have that language. So even if Pam Bondi wants to use that language to slow down the release of documents, she can't do the same for the subpoena because it does not include that language. And so she has to release the documents and all of the files regardless of a sham investigation. And now there are two strong efforts to ensure that we get those. As far as what's next on oversight, we're now looking at the bank records. We're looking at what were the financial crimes that were happening, who and what powerful men.
Ahí está, García lo dice sin rodeos. Bondi está inventando excusas para no liberar documentos, y lo hace con una precisión quirúrgica. La ley recién firmada por Trump permite esconder los archivos bajo la excusa de una investigación en curso, pero la situación del Congreso no le da esa salida. Está obligada a entregarlo todo, sin teatro y sin pretextos. Y prepárense, porque lo que viene profundiza aún más ese desastre dentro del Departamento de Justicia de Trump. Vamos ahora a lo que advirtió el senador Chris Murphy, que desmontó la defensa de Bondi en cuestión de segundos.
If there are more names connected to the Democratic Party that come out as a result of this.
So what? I mean, yeah, I'm sure that there are Democrats in those files, there are Republicans in those files, there are, Wall Street executives who have no political affiliation. What we want is to understand who was involved in this. I don't think the president is so selfless that he was, stopping the release of these files for so long because he was protecting his friends. I just think it stands to reason that he's very much connected to this scandal. And we may or may not know the extent of that because it could be that the president is going to try to find a way to redact any information connected to him from those files. But to me, it just doesn't matter the political affiliation. The law is the law. They need to release the...
Murphy es claro. Caiga quien caiga, democráticos, republicanos, figuras de Wall Street, da igual. Lo importante es que la evidencia salga completa. Exactamente lo contrario del juego que está jugando Bondi desde el primer día. Proteger a los poderosos, especialmente a los amigos del presidente. Y aquí entra el punto clave que Bondi está intentando enterrar. Seguir el dinero. Lo que llevaban meses pidiendo los sobrevivientes, los investigadores y los demócratas, justo cuando Bondi creía que podía seguir escondiendo documentos bancarios, el senador Ron Wyden la dejó expuesta con una filtración que golpeó directamente el corazón del encubrimiento. Wyden revela la contundencia. Ejecutivos de JP Morgan ayudando a Epstein a disfrazar operaciones gigantescas, transacciones millonarias supervisadas desde lo más alto del banco, correos, movimientos de cuentas, instrucciones para sanear retiros de efectivo. Todo estaba a la vista, menos para Pam Bondi, que insistía en que ya no había nada más que ver. ¿Casualidad? No. Esto corresponde exactamente a lo que lleva Bondi llevando meses bloqueando. Nombres, transferencias, bancos y cualquier vínculo al que pudiera tocar el círculo de Trump. Y cuando parecía que el escándalo ya no podía crecer más, otro senador que conoce perfectamente este caso, Sheldon Whitehouse, añadió gasolina al incendio.
But, clearly, if you're the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation and a teenaged entry-level employee gets hired away by a friend of yours, the ordinary response by anybody normal would be a cake, a card, and it was nice having you work for us. And the fact that Trump went bonkers and expelled this guy Epstein from his club, that was already a huge signal that he knew that something really bad was going on, because otherwise his behavior was inexplicable. So now to have him actually confirm it, and to say in his own language that back then he knew that this guy Epstein was a sick pervert, it opens up just a whole new can of worms about what he knew and when he knew it.
And you have his Attorney General today clearly refusing to answer in any way questions about, will you actually release the Epstein files? It was just blather that came out when that question came up.
Yeah, she's in a real mess. Remember, she came in saying that she was going to get to the bottom of the whole Epstein files thing. Then we discovered that billions of dollars had flowed through Epstein accounts, that suspicious activity reports had been sent to the Department of Justice, and not one had been investigated by her Department of Justice. We then went through the binders and all the shenanigans about the Epstein files investigation, the search for how many times Trump's name was in it. And finally, everybody's ready to clear the air. The House votes hugely, completely rolling Donald Trump so badly that he flips himself. And the Senate, by unanimous consent, put a new law out there in front of the Attorney General. And she can't say, I will enforce this new law. So I think we can look forward to more shenanigans out of the MAGA Bondi DOJ, but it's not going to go well, because this was a very clear statement by Congress and the American people, enough. And so when she goes back to more games to try to hide Trump's role in photographs and all of that, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse for her.
White House prácticamente describe el pánico de la administración, la expulsión repentina de Epstein del club de Trump, las advertencias internas, la acumulación de reportes financieros ignorados y la negativa de Bondi al decir de forma simple y directa que piensa cumplir la ley recién aprobada. Ahora bien, aquí es donde todo se conecta. No estamos frente a un error administrativo ni frente a una diferencia legal. Estamos viendo el mismo comportamiento repetido. Bondi, Patel y todo el aparato MAGA defendiendo a Trump a costa de enterrar evidencia. Y esa evidencia ya no depende solamente del Departamento de Justicia. Bancos, instituciones privadas, archivos de tercero están filtrando información que el gobierno no puede bloquear. Ellos ya no controlan el flujo. Esto es rumor de Estado. El presidente Donald Trump acaba de firmar lo que podría ser la decisión más peligrosa para su propia administración. Convirtió en ley la liberación de los archivos de Epstein. Sí, su propia firma. La misma mano que lleva años tapando escándalos. Ahora abrió una puerta que no puede cerrar. Y la reacción fue inmediata. Cierre del ala de prensa, periodistas expulsados y un ataque de furia digital en su red social.
Who have been asking all of their sources, when is he going to sign the bill? Is the bill even at the White House? All to at least mostly radio silence. Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, was caught by reporters, asked when President Trump was going to sign this bill, and he said he had no update on that at this time. And just a reminder, it wasn't just one White House official, it was a number of White House officials who said, alongside President Trump himself, that he would sign this bill when it hit his desk. Now, we were told that after it was sent over by the Senate that the process of getting it here to the White House could take a few hours, but that was hours and hours and hours ago, and we still have no reaction, no answers to the questions of whether or not it's even here, whether or not it's even made it to President Trump's desk. So of course this is raising even more questions as to, in particular, is he going to actually sign this bill? Again, White House officials and the president himself have said they've committed to him signing it. Then the big question becomes, if he does in fact sign it, what's actually released and when is it released? I've been told by White House officials President Trump isn't going to stand in the way of any of these documents being released. But again, we still don't even have the basics of whether or not the bill is here at the White House. So, Pamela.
Esto no es un comportamiento normal de un gobierno que presume transparencia. Si el presidente realmente quisiera abrir los archivos, Epstein sin trucos ni trampas, no tendría que esconderse en oficinas oscuras, ni bloquear a la prensa, ni simular que todo ocurre con naturalidad. Un mandatario seguro de lo que firma no necesita un apagón informativo. Un mandatario acorralado, sí. Así que vamos paso a paso. Este no es un trámite administrativo, fue una operación de contención desesperada, y lo que viene ahora empeora, porque mientras intentaban ocultar lo que pasaba adentro, afuera ya se filtraban señales de pánico.
Is the President of the United States standing beside his best friend Jeffrey Epstein? As we all know, Mr. Epstein is one of the most notorious sexual predators in American history. For 8 weeks, the Republicans on this committee have chosen to protect these two men instead of providing justice to Mr. Epstein's victims. Now the administration is panicking. First, they campaigned on releasing the Epstein files. Then AG Bondi and associates did a photo op with the files. And she said, and I quote, "The Epstein list is on my desk." Then somehow the Epstein list didn't exist. Then the Epstein files became a Democratic hoax. Now the president is supposedly supportive of releasing the files, even though he's currently ignoring a congressional subpoena to do so. Now the president is simply crashing out. And it's because he can't seem to explain his special decades-long relationship with one of the most prominent sexual predators in American history. It's already public that he's in the Epstein files, but his administration is hiding the context of his involvement if any, with Mr. Epstein's
Y hablando de pánico, veamos la siguiente pieza que dejó expuesto algo más profundo. Y aquí está el punto que la administración quiere borrar. Trump no teme los archivos por lo que puedan decir de otros, teme a lo que mencionan a él, y lo sabe. Por eso intenta reescribir la historia a codazos. Que si Epstein era demócrata, que si todo lo que viene de la oposición, que si él siempre quiso transparencia, mentira tras mentira, intentando borrar fotos, eventos, vínculos y silencios que llevan décadas ahí. Y en su intento de controlar el relato, terminó filtrando nueva información en uno de sus mensajes más largos y desesperados. Vamos a verlo, porque ahí fue donde dejó al descubierto el verdadero temor detrás de todos sus discursos. Ahí tienen el intento más torpe de revisionismo histórico que hemos visto en meses. Trump afirma que todo ocurrió por orden suya, cuando la realidad es exactamente la contraria. Perdió el control del Congreso, perdió el control del partido y ahora intenta disfrazar con debilidad con grandilocuencia. Esa es la parte que él no quiere admitir. No firmó porque quiso, firmó porque ya no tenía cómo frenar la presión interna. Y eso, para él, es una humillación política. Pero si ya el mensaje era delirante, lo que viene ahora agrava todo, porque hay más instituciones implicadas, más documentos circulando, más información que el gobierno ha intentado bloquear. Y justamente eso quedó expuesto en el siguiente material.
The reason that we're even getting information right now is because of the Epstein estate. They have been the only ones that have actually released information in compliance with the outstanding subpoena that we have. So there's a lot more that they could have done. I think the fact that the president has switched his tone signals to everyone that they basically are going to say, well, now there's an active investigation, and so therefore legally we can't release anything else.
Congresswoman, the Treasury Department is also involved in this, according to Ron Wyden, the senior Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee. He and his staff have put together a long list of things in the possession of the Treasury Department. Do you also want the Treasury Department to be included in anything that is released by the Trump administration?
Absolutely. One of the things that we had actually talked about when we had a closed door meeting with the survivors earlier this year, along with the speaker, was the speaker said, hey, I'm committed to doing everything that I can. And then obviously he did nothing. But one of the things that we talked about in that closed door meeting was that we needed to expand the breadth of this investigation. And we didn't just need subpoenas that were coming from the Oversight Committee, but we needed some out of financial services as well, so that financial services could be digging in, because that is the equivalent of the specific committee that oversees Treasury. We know that there were signals because of the type of suspicious activity that was taking place as it relates to Epstein. We know in talking to survivors about how much money was kind of going in and out with wires internationally. And we also know that there seems to be a lot of shell corporations that have been set up not only in the United States, but internationally, a lot of shell and fake modeling agencies that these girls would kind of be run through. We also had been told that there had been a mechanism to make sure that they could get immigration papers that were not necessarily had not necessarily gone through the proper vetting and done correctly, as well as some fake marriages. So there's just a lot. And the thing is, you can't pretend that this sophisticated system was only reliant upon two people. Yes, these two people may have been at the top, but with the level of sophistication, I'm just not sure that there's still not activity that is going on. And that is why this matters even today. I know you went back to the 90s, and yes, you're right. There has been a miscarriage of justice for so many decades. But the question is, by ignoring this, are we still allowing for those same loopholes to make sure?
Ese es el golpe que más asusta a Trump. Seguir el rastro del dinero, no las fotos, no los testimonios, el dinero. El tesoro tiene registros, flujos financieros, empresas pantalla, giros y desde hacia el extranjero, agencias falsas e incluso posibles gestiones de inmigración manipuladas. Esto no se tapa negando en redes sociales. Esto se investiga. Y si algo quedó claro en este video es que la estructura detrás de Epstein no podría operar con dos personas aisladas. Era un sistema, una red que involucraba políticos, empresarios, intermediarios legales, bancos y funcionarios. Trump teme quedar ubicado en ese mapa. Ya no controla el Congreso, ya no controla la línea del tiempo y ahora tampoco controla los documentos. Esto es rumor de Estado. Esta ha sido, sin exagerar, la peor semana del presidente Donald Trump desde que puso un pie en la Casa Blanca, y eso ya es decir mucho. En menos de 7 días se acumuló un desastre tras otro. El Congreso lo obligó a liberar los archivos de Epstein. Sus cifras de aprobación se hundieron. Marjorie Taylor Greene salió disparada del cargo y hoy miles de personas están tomando las calles de Washington. Un presidente acorralado siempre reacciona igual. Miente, se esconde y publica tonterías desesperadas. Y hoy tenemos un ejemplo de libro. Antes de entrar en las protestas, en el colapso dentro del Partido Republicano y en la huida pública de Trump, arranquemos por donde más le duele: sus números en las encuestas. CNN lo desmenuzó y no pudieron ser peores.
Okay, that's just not the reality. America's economy is struggling. If you look at the Fed's Beige Book recently, you could have up to 80% of the United States already in a recession right now. And Americans are experiencing prices that are rising, continue to rise, and they certainly feel that they have risen. A new poll, in fact, shows that 75% of Americans say that grocery prices have gone up in the past 6 months. Only 12% say they've gone down, and perception is reality when it comes to the economy. A new Reuters Ipsos poll shows Trump's overall approval rating at 38%, the lowest so far of his second term, and that's just one of at least 5 polls in recent days showing Trump at his lowest approval rating. Out front now, Harry Enten, Xochitl Hinojosa, and Bill Kristol. So, Harry, look, when I say perception is reality, when it comes to the economy, that then translates directly to people's feelings about politics and who is in charge. So in the case of Trump, okay, how does this break down when you look at Trump's own party, in the Republican Party? How do they see him?
You know, this isn't just about overall, it's about Republicans, as you say, and the floor. I'm starting to see some cracks in that floor. Hasn't fallen through yet, but they're clear cracks. What are we talking about? Well, just look at the change since January in Trump's overall approval rating among Republicans. You see it down 22 points since January. That is a clear drop in the net approval rating among Republicans. And the question is, why? What's going on? What is driving that? Well, you heard the Vice President of the United States talk about the economy. You know, they say it's the economy, stupid. That's James Carville. I'll say it's the economy, smarty pants to you, Aaron Burnett. And what we see is, if we look at Trump's change in his net approval rating, and we just look at since March, if we look at it since March, what do we see in terms of inflation? What do we see in terms of immigration? Look at this. You see it here. You see a 27-point drop. You see a 19-point drop. These are the types of drops. What we're talking about here are the types of things.
Y aquí está el punto central. Cuando la gente siente el golpe en el bolsillo, no hay propaganda que alcance. Estamos entrando en la temporada donde las familias compran más comidas que nunca y se encuentra con cuentas cada vez más altas. Trump insiste en presumir un Thanksgiving más barato, porque según él, algunos productos bajaron 1 centavo. Bajaron porque quitaron 1/4 de la canasta. Es como presumir que una cena es más económica porque le sacaste el pavo. Lo que sí subió, y bastante, fueron las tarifas que el propio Trump impuso para regalonear a dictadores, presumir caras absurdas y manipular el mercado antes de sus operaciones bursátiles. Por eso la gente está molesta, por eso sus números están por el piso y por eso se está desplomando internamente. La respuesta del presidente fue un berrinche público en Truth Social, presumiendo los mejores números de su carrera. Una fantasía incluso que él admite que la gente no ha entendido su trabajo económico. No, Donald, la gente lo entendió perfectamente y por eso lo está castigando. Pero esto es solo el principio, porque mientras sus números caen, las calles están estallando. Vamos a ver lo que ocurrió hoy en Washington.
Lincoln Memorial, where tens of thousands of people have gathered to call for the impeachment, conviction, and removal of Donald Trump. Right now, we got Dropkick Murphys on stage. Message to MAGA. You think we're going to stop? You think that no kings is just one day? Well, this isn't no kings. This is the next moment and the next moment. And these moments will equal a movement, and that movement will stop your wannabe king, your wannabe tyrant. We will not stop. We will not give up. And most importantly, we will not comply. We got people lining the stairs of the Lincoln Memorial. We got people all the way around. In the name of all that's made.
Esto es lo que Trump teme. Su presidencia se está desmoronando por todos los frentes. No solo es que su popularidad está hecha trizas, es que ya no intimida a nadie. Los republicanos empiezan a romper filas. Sus decisiones sobre Ucrania los dejan como un presidente dispuesto a entregar el continente a Putin con tal de recibir una sonrisa o un regalito. Y el desastre de los archivos Epstein está erosionando lo poco que quedaba de su credibilidad. Y mientras el país protesta, ¿qué hace Trump? Irse a jugar golf, literalmente. Mientras millones sienten el peso de la inflación, la incertidumbre, él aparece jugando golf en campos como si nada. Jacks Nicklaus y de arreglos en la base aérea retrató perfecto lo desconectado que está el presidente en su actualidad. Pero la realidad lo está alcanzando. Las derrotas legales, la rebelión dentro de su partido, los fallos contra su plan de manipular distritos electorales, todo está explotando al mismo tiempo. Incluso estados controlados por republicanos le están diciendo que no van a prestarse para sus trucos.
That wasn't made up, and it's going to haunt the entire Republican Party, particularly Republican House members in swing seats heading into the midterms who have to explain what's going on to their voters. In fact, there are reports that some Republicans are already privately panicking over those upcoming elections. We got one new poll that shows Democrats with a gargantuan 14-point lead in the generic ballot. Now, that's an outlier in the polling, and if that ends up being an outlier in the final result, even so, it is very clear when you put all the polling together, the Democrats right now are the ones with political momentum. That's evidenced by the off-cycle elections earlier this month, the first real test we had of all of this, when Democrats flipped the governor's mansion and the state legislature in Virginia, opening up a supermajority there. They became the first party in decades to hold New Jersey's gubernatorial mansion for 3 straight terms, to say nothing of the fact that 34-year-old Democratic Socialist beat both a Republican and a Trump-endorsed independent candidate to become the mayor-elect of the biggest city in the country. In fact, Republicans are so concerned about the midterms, Donald Trump ordered red states to rig their congressional maps, believing that extremely rare mid-cycle redistricting would be his salvation, right? The way to make sure that Republicans face no consequences with actual voters next year. But even in that case, Trump cannot get it over the finish line. Despite bullying and browbeating state legislatures with visits to the White House, personal entreaties by Vice President J.D. Vance, state legislatures under complete Republican control like Indiana and Kansas, to name 2, have refused to go along with this scheme, at least so far. They have told Trump, no, they will not do his bidding. Even Texas, which of course did go along with the plan, had its new district struck down by a federal judge this week. Meanwhile, in Deep Blue, California, voters overwhelmingly approved a referendum to draw new maps of their own in order to level the playing field, which means, somewhat comically, at the end of the day, if the Texas map stays struck down, it's entirely possible Democrats end up being the ones benefiting from the whole fight. And then look at what happened in Congress this week, if you're not convinced. Republicans got rolled. They completely caved across both chambers. I mean, only one single Republican voted against the bill to release the Epstein files. That is despite, let's not forget, an enormous months-long pressure campaign from Donald Trump in the White House to block and kill this bill. Trump lost so completely, so thoroughly, he had no choice but to himself sign a bill he hated and opposed behind closed doors. Now, of course, the concern is what exactly Trump might do to distract the country from his losses. The last time Epstein was in the news, he sent federal troops to occupy Washington, D.C. A federal judge today said that was unlawful. He's threatened to do the same here in New York. There's a worry that as his losses pile up, he will only try harder to become an authoritarian. That is one of the reasons that Democratic members of Congress, both former military and intelligence officials, put out this video this week reminding troops and other officers they do not have to follow illegal orders from the president. In fact, it's crucial they don't. And Donald Trump has been completely melting down over that very video today. He has called for the participants in the video you're seeing on your screen right now, members of Congress, to be tried for treason. He has amplified calls for them to be executed. He has received bipartisan condemnation for his comments. All this is happening at a time when his approval rating has cratered, and it is very clear to everyone, not just people watching, but the people doing politics in Washington, that he is.
Lo vimos también en el análisis de Chris Hayes. Lo expone como la estrategia de manipular mapas electorales desmoronándose, cómo los republicanos están entrando en pánico para las próximas elecciones y cómo el propio Trump está siendo rechazado en estados que antes le obedecían sin dudar. Y precisamente por eso hoy estamos viendo las protestas masivas, porque la gente reconoce que este presidente no solo es peligroso, es inestable y está debilitado más que nunca. Esto es Rumor de Estado. Lo que estamos viendo hoy es el retrato de un presidente en caída libre. Donald Trump está viendo cómo su mandato se desmorona frente a sus propios ojos, y cuando eso pasa, cuando él siente miedo pegado a la nuca, siempre recurre al mismo truco barato: no corregir sus decisiones, no dejar de violar la ley, no, corre a su red social para llorar, atacar y hundirse más. Y esta vez dejó una colección de publicaciones que tienen a medio medio internet preguntándose si el presidente está perdiendo el control. El spoiler es que sí.
Resigned on January 5th.
You know what? Honestly, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You're on the other side of the president for 1 week and you can't take the heat. Imagine what it is to sit in my shoes, to not only be on the opposite side of him, but to have people like her who are constantly fanning the flames of hate. And imagine what those threats look like when you literally are someone like me. But at the end of the day, I know that I serve the people of Texas 30. And so my job isn't to be there and necessarily do whatever is going to make the president not be on my back, but instead is to focus on making sure that I can push forward with policies that are positive for Texas 30.
So she seems to be suggesting that it is their disagreement over the release of the Epstein files that is causing this shocking political breakup. What's your response to that?
I mean, listen, he's upset with Thomas Massie, and so he's gone after him. He's upset with Boebert. He's upset with any Republican that actually signed the discharge petition. But somehow they were able to weather the storm. So, you know, this really speaks to the fact that Marjorie, who has been an instigator of a lot of this hate that we see as it relates to the MAGA movement, you know, it's just interesting that I don't know if she really fully understood how bad she was making it for other people. And now that they're doing it to her, you know, I just got to say, well, why is it that everyone else is able to stand and you can't?
The House Oversight Committee, which you are a member of, said Friday night that your committee is expanding its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Do you have any idea what this expanded investigation might include?
I do not at this point in time. I'll say leadership is keeping it under wraps to make sure that we can hopefully not have many more obstacles. If you'll remember, we decided that we were going to put out a subpoena for Ghislaine Maxwell, and the next thing you know, the president's henchman showed up to her cell, and the next thing you know, we didn't have our sit-down talk with her, which I imagine would have gone a little differently if we had. So we're keeping that tight-lipped for now.
The chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer of Kentucky, says that Democrats are just trying to use these files to smear the president. Just to be clear, do you or your colleagues have any idea about what's in these files, one way or the other, relating to Trump or not?
Absolutely not. I mean, here's the reality. If we did have that information, I don't know that we would need it necessarily to be released. And we know that the Republicans keep saying, you know, figure out what it is the Democrats have done and make sure that you can pull out the Democratic stuff and make sure you get rid of all the Republican names. Listen, I don't really care who is in the files. At the end of the day, right is right, wrong is wrong. And if you are truly about law and order, then we should be looking for who it is that has broken the law and in what ways. And we need to better understand who potentially in government allowed for a lot of these things to take place, whether we're talking about the fake immigration paperwork that we...
Lo que acabamos de escuchar es clave para entender el nivel de desesperación del presidente. Su círculo más fiel que se está resquebrajando, Green, una de las voces que más alimentó el odio que sostiene a MAGA, ahora no aguanta vivir bajo el mismo acoso que ella misma promovió. Y Trump, lejos de calmar la tormenta, está señalando a cualquiera que no se arrodille ante él. El presidente no solo se enfrenta al escándalo de Epstein, enfrenta el hecho que, por primera vez, desobedecerlo empieza a ser rentable dentro del propio partido republicano. Y justo cuando crees que va a moderarse, se va a su red social a hacer el ridículo con imágenes, insultos y amenazas veladas. Pasemos al siguiente material. Esto ya roza lo grotesco. Trump se proyecta como un monarca frente a sus opositores, como si el país fuera de su propiedad y los demás estuviéramos obligados a obedecerles. Luego se le suma Glenn Beck justificando que la CIA o el ejército tendrán que aceptar cualquier instrucción del presidente, aunque sea ilegal. Trump lo comparte porque le encanta la idea, la fantasía de un líder cuya palabra sustituye la ley. Pero aquí viene lo más grave. Esta rabieta digital no solo es patética, es peligrosa, porque mientras sube memes delirantes, también deja rastros que lo incriminan. Y el siguiente clip lo deja clarísimo.
Defense and his chairman of the Joint Chiefs to, quote, shoot at their legs at unarmed protesters in front of the White House that he wanted moved.
Actually, I know you're talking about Mark Esper's book. He didn't exactly say that. He said the president suggested that, but they were never ordered to do that.
And he got out of the Oval Office quickly so that he wasn't told to actually do it. And I give him a lot of credit for that. I give him a lot of credit.
So let's talk right now. Do you believe President Trump has issued any illegal orders?
To my knowledge, I am not aware of things that are illegal, but certainly there are some legal gymnastics that are going on with these Caribbean strikes. And everything
La senadora intenta matizar, pero hasta ella admite lo esencial. Trump ha dado órdenes ilegales y ya ni siquiera se trata de interpretaciones. Senadores republicanos, incluyendo a Rand Paul, lo dicen abiertamente. El presidente está utilizando fuerzas militares contra civiles y pescadores extranjeros sin procesos judiciales, sin supervisión ni nada. Eso no es un simple exceso, eso es un presidente actuando fuera de la ley y creyendo que todavía puede salirse con la suya. Y curiosamente, entre todos los clips que Trump quiso compartir hoy para defenderse, dejó por fuera uno muy incómodo. Vamos a verlo.
From your colleagues, fellow veterans, that what you have put out there is weakening and corrosive to the military.
Well, these unfortunately are some of Trump's core supporters that are rallying behind the president, and they know better. They know exactly the difference between lawful versus unlawful. We were very clear in the video that what we're talking about is unlawful orders. You have the president's spokesperson going into a press conference this past week and saying that we called for people to disobey lawful orders. They're simply lying because the truth is unacceptable to them. It's unacceptable. We wanted to start a conversation, and we did, about the dangerous rhetoric this president is using and the threats that he's made to use our military in an unlawful way.
Specifically what?
Well, send troops into Chicago, send troops into polling stations, kill terrorists' families, arrest and execute members of Congress, shoot peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square. Need I go on?
Roe lo dice sin rodeos. Trump lleva tiempo coqueteando con órdenes militares que ningún profesional podía obedecer sin violar la ley. Estamos ante un presidente que usa la institución más seria del país, las Fuerzas Armadas, como si fuera su guardia personal, como si servir un uniforme significara cumplir venganzas políticas. Y hoy, con su coalición resquebrajándose, está más dispuesto que nunca a cruzar las líneas peligrosas. Esto es Rumor de Estado.
Ya por último, y si llegaste hasta aquí, si este análisis te resultó útil, suscríbete, deja tu me gusta y comparte este video. Como dijimos al inicio, el 98% de quienes nos ven no están suscritos. Ayúdenos a crecer esta comunidad y llegar a 1000 suscriptores. Nos vemos en el próximo Rumor de Estado.